Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, everybody. I'll give everybody a second. Good morning and welcome back. That first session was incredible. And the dance, incredible as well. Ratna, everybody, amazing. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Becky George. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm honored to serve as one of Impact's board members. Before we move forward, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the devastating mass shooting that happened in Shreveport yesterday. 8 children's lives were stolen in an act of domestic violence that's hard, really, truly hard to comprehend. It's hard to find the words right now in moments like this. There's so much pain in the world right now, so much grief and so much loss. And it reminds us why the conversation we just had matters so deeply. So thank you, Pooja, wherever you are. The powerful session with Dr. Murthy and Pooja was about community care and how we show up for each other in moments of loneliness, fear, and trauma. And moments like this call us to hold each other even more closely, because care is how we respond to the world when the world can feel so overwhelming. It can show us how we stay grounded in shared humanity. And it's also why it matters what happens in the work ahead. Because care doesn't just happen at an individual level. It has to be reflected in the systems we build and in the policies we shape. So with that, we're going to transition into our first policy plenary, Shaping AI for Public Good. Apologies. South Asian Americans are at the forefront of building and shaping artificial intelligence. Our community is deeply embedded in the innovation driving this technology forward. But we are also among those who feel its impacts most directly, economically, socially, and environmentally. The question before us is not how fast we innovate, but how do we responsibly do so? How do we ensure that AI actually works for everyone? That it protects workers, that it addresses bias, and that it strengthens and not undermines our communities? To help us think through these questions, we are honored to be joined by the leader who has been at the forefront of shaping the national conversation on AI policy. Representative Ro Khanna has been at the leading voice in Congress on technology, innovation, and economic justice. He has championed efforts to ensure that the United States leads in AI while also putting in place the guardrails needed to protect workers, address inequities, and ensure the benefits of this technology are widely shared. We're grateful for his leadership and excited to hear from his perspective. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end, so I encourage you to start thinking about questions now. Please join me in welcoming Representative Ro Khanna.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your incredible leadership, for your commitment to human rights and your moral clarity. I appreciate it. Great to see my friend Deepak Raj, and thank you, Deepak, for your leadership, and my longtime friend, now I can say Raj Gupta. With Vinita and I'm having lunch with his daughter later. And my father worked at Roman Haas, where Raj was the CEO. So our families have known each other, well, probably for 30 or 40 years. And Neil, great to see you as an elected official. Neil has been at the heart of building impact. And, the last person who was the Montgomery County Commissioner turned out to be governor. And Neil's got a very bright future. I love the governor, but Neil will be probably a more progressive version once he gets there. But I have a great respect for Governor Shapiro. And thank you also to Chintan. And what a great turnout. It gets bigger and bigger every year. Nearly 70 years ago, John F. Kennedy said that he would not take orders from the Pope. As a Indian American of Hindu faith, I feel compelled to say that I will listen to the Pope. How things have changed. The Pope is admonishing America. I never thought we would see the day where the Pope is questioning our own morality. And while I'll talk about AI and want to open the conversation up to AI, I did want to just spend a few minutes on this illegal and immoral war. We have a situation where the president today is threatening to blow up an entire civilization. that kind of rhetoric has been normalized. It's not a just war. A just war requires an imminent and real threat to the United States. There was none. A just war requires that we exhaust all diplomatic efforts. We did not. A just war requires proportionality. There's no proportionality in what Donald Trump is doing. And what have we achieved? The Strait of Hormuz now has Iran with more control. China has more influence in the region, is talking about oil trade now not in dollars but in yuans. You have 13 American service members who are dead and more of our troops at risk. You've replaced Khamenei with Khamenei Jr., who actually now wants to develop nuclear weapons. The enriched uranium is still in the ground, not removed from Iran. And the IRGC is a more hardline regime. You've wreaked devastation on the global economy, and you have compromised America's moral standing. We need a new moral direction in this country. We need a new moral foreign policy in America, one that remembers our ideals and our roots, one that says that the dignity of all life matters, the dignity of a Palestinian in Gaza, the dignity of an Iranian schoolgirl, the dignity of those starving in Cuba because of fuel blockades, that America will lead, concerned about our nation, but concerned about leading a world beyond a colonizer's model that recognizes the dignity and aspirations of people around the world. That is the multiracial America I believe in. That is the America that I believe so many want to see. That is the America that our community should fight for. At a time that the country has deep economic divides, we must address them to become that multiracial democracy that Frederick Douglass talked about of composite nation. You know, I'm inspired as a North Star by two fundamental influences on my life. My grandfather, Amarnath Vidyalankar, he was in jail in the 1930s and in the 1940s, fighting for India's independence. How many of you folks here have followed some of the work Massey and I did on Epstein? Yeah. Well, I mentioned that because I don't know how many people in America followed it. You're an informed group, but a lot of people in Britain have followed it. And there was this headline a few weeks ago: grandfather jailed by British monarchy. Grandson in the U.S. Congress may topple British monarchy. You know, this was when Prince Andrew was arrested. I don't have any interest in toppling the British monarchy. I am going to be meeting with the British ambassador and telling him that King Charles should meet with the survivors. But I say this because my grandfather and Gandhi's independence movement influenced my worldview, influenced my faith, a Gandhian Hinduism, and a worldview that we should lead for justice, for human rights, for peace. And then my birth city, Philadelphia, born in 1976, a bicentennial baby. My wife, every time I say this, she says, you had nothing to do with that. I do think it's a convenient fact for a politician. That influenced me, the sense of America's founding, belief in liberty and justice and equality for all. And so our project is to become a cohesive multiracial democracy, what Frederick Douglass talked about in the 1860s. You know, Douglass had been enslaved for 20 years, and he, in 1869, defends the right of Chinese immigrants to come to the United States. And Douglass says, you know, in the free air of America, their best traditions will survive, and the parts that you don't like will fall by the wayside, and we will become a composite nation, a nation of all nations, a nation with faiths and traditions from every part of the world. Douglass prophesied that in 1869, and the task for our generation is to see that actually become reality, to become this cohesive multiracial democracy. You know, for all those folks who are upset or down, I say our tasks are so much easier than previous generations. Our tasks are easier than what Raj Gupta or Deepak or my father or my mother had. I mean, we've been the beneficiaries of so many freedom struggles in this country, the beneficiaries of incredible education. If you were asking me when I was growing up in the 1980s that there would be an Indian American, African American woman who would be the major party's nominee, I would have said, you're out of your mind. And then if you had told me that she would get 48.5% in Pennsylvania, I'd said, what part of Pennsylvania? America is making progress in spite of ourselves. The same country that elected Donald Trump has put 6 Indian Americans in the Congress. When I was growing up, someone said to me, Ro, you're Indian American, you're of Hindu faith, go work on the Hill, you'll never get elected. They were wrong. My teachers and Little League coaches in Bucks County were more right. They said, in this country, you can do anything. But to be that multiracial democracy, we have to address the economic divide. I represent a district of $20 trillion. I just had a fireside chat at Stanford, and I did 2 chats. We did one with Bernie Sanders and one with Jensen Huang. Bernie got a bigger turnout. But both need to be addressed. 1/3 of the nation's wealth originates in my district. 5 companies over $1 trillion. And yet you have a world where 19 billionaires own $3.4 trillion, 12% of the GDP. 3 times the wealth concentration of the Gilded Age. And they're not building libraries or universities. And at the same time, 70% of Americans no longer believe in the American dream. We cannot build a multiracial democracy if we do not give people a stake in the future economy. We cannot see islands of prosperity and seas of despair. We cannot have places like Bucks County and Bristol, where Fairlawn Works was a steel plant, face deindustrialization and see prosperity just in a few places and hope that America will embrace each other. To build a composite nation, we must create economic independence and economic security across this nation. We must make sure that the AI revolution works not just for billionaires, but for ordinary Americans. And that has been my entire thrust with the call for a new economic patriotism. This time requires a boldness that we haven't seen since FDR's New Deal. We need a Marshall Plan not for Europe, we need a Marshall Plan for America. We need an economic development strategy that will lift up Johnstown, Pennsylvania, Lorain, Ohio, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and build economic independence and security across this country with a new industrial bank, with 1,000 new trade schools, with new tech institutes, with new care jobs in child care, elder care, and home care, with new investment in small business and capital across this country. And we need what I call a Work for America program. A program that will hire young people right out of high school or college to either rebuild their communities or to come to do a moonshot project in the federal government. This is modeled after FDR's Works Progress Administration that hired 8.5 million people. We should hire 1 million people today, put them to work to rebuild this country. Economic renewal is our new national purpose, a mission to rebuild every part of this country and the common work stitching us back together. Let me end with this. I was up at Brown University the other day and I said, how many people are concerned about getting jobs? 80% of the hands went up. Stanford's a little more arrogant. They don't admit it as much. But Brown, they did. 80%. When William Julius Wilson wrote about the deindustrialization of inner-city black communities, no one cared. When Deaton and Case wrote about the deindustrialization of white working-class communities, more people paid attention, but still not enough action. But now the Ivy Leaguers' kids are worried about jobs. This is the time to build a broad coalition to have the boldest, most patriotic jobs agenda in this country's history since the FDR New Deal. We need an economic strategy for development. We need an economic bill of rights so people have health care, child care, and education across this country. We need to be spending the $400 billion not on wars in Iran, but in free child care, free public college, free trade schools in this country. And we need to be taxing the billionaires in my district Some of them who are upset at me. Some of them who are upset at me, so that we can pay for the economic independence and security of people across this country. You know, when I try to explain to my billionaire friends in Silicon Valley that I stood up to, I said, I'm the nice guy. The next generation, they're not going to be just a couple % of taxes. They want a lot more. So we can do this in a way where we're all on the same page, or you can have more revolution in this country. You know, when you go to Ohio or Pennsylvania and you say, and I say, I'd like to tax billionaires 5% so that they're not worth 20 billion, they may be worth 19 billion. And by the way, they have a 10% rate of return. I said, how many people are for that? How many people in this room are for taxing billionaires? You know, and then there are always like 10 hands that don't go up in Pennsylvania, Ohio. And I asked them, I said, you know, what's the problem? Do you not want to tax the billionaires? They say, Congressman, 5% is not enough. What about 10 or 20%? They don't believe me in Silicon Valley. But if I can stand up to the billionaires in my district, this should not be a hard vote for the 434 other members of Congress. I fundamentally believe that when we have a strategy of economic patriotism, when we lift up families and communities across this country to have economic success in the wealthiest country in the world, when we make sure that the places that have been left out, the places that were deindustrialized, the people who don't have health care and child care actually start participating in the prosperity that Silicon Valley has built, then we will start to heal the wounds of this country, not through empty rhetoric of inspiration, not through an appeal to motivational speech, but to the structural change of a system that has left too many out and too many behind. I believe in economic patriotism will build a multiracial America, and that this nation, under our generation, will live out the founding ideals and Douglass ideals and ideals that my grandfather fought for, a multiracial democracy, standing up for human rights across the world, leading a free world with dignity and equality for people across this nation and across the globe. Thank you for participating. I look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, so we'll have a Q&A now from the audience. So if people want to raise their hand, I'll come around and hand you a mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for coming and taking the time to speak to us today. In this time of disunity, when divisions are being drawn between people based on race, based on class, based on just where they're from, Bucks County, Montgomery County, what messages do you feel are uniting people, not just in your district, but across the nation?
Well, I appreciate that. I say that there are few places we are united. We need to hold elites accountable. That's what the Epstein fight was all about. There has to be one system of justice in America. Just because you're wealthy and powerful doesn't mean that you can abuse young girls or watch as your networks and friends do that. I have been clear against the Epstein class, and that is something that has united not just me, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie, Lauren Boebert, red and blue districts, to stand up for one system of justice against elite impunity. We need to be against these wars overseas. That is something that is uniting this country. We don't want to see our tax dollars going to wars overseas, and we don't want to see our tax dollars going to Israel anymore and the free ride. We need to make sure that that money is spent in the United States of America, in our communities like Bucks County and Montgomery counties, to create jobs, to have health care, to have an economic renewal. That unites America. And we need an economic strategy. We can't just have the tech billionaires control all the wealth and make the decisions. That unites America. Anti-Epstein class, anti-war, pro-working and middle class. New economic patriotism. I believe not only will that unite America, I've shown it can unite America. I'm the only Democrat who has ever passed something with the Trump coalition. When else have we done that? The Epstein bill. He still doesn't know it's my bill. You know, he signed it. I didn't get a pen. I didn't get the Sharpie. But I'm the only Democrat who's actually passed something partnering with disaffected Trump voters since the 10 years he's been there. So it's not just rhetoric. I know how to build a coalition that will bring Democrats and disaffected Trump voters together. You know, I was just looking at one of the things I wanted to highlight, because we have something that we should be proud of. Dr. Balachandran. You read this? You know, remarkable young Indian-American doctor at Sloan Kettering has come up with mRNA and possibly a treatment for pancreatic cancer. You know, I, like many of you, know people who passed away with pancreatic cancer. It's a dismal disease, dismal prospects. And Dr. Balachandran basically has come up with an mRNA vaccine to treat it. Why do I mention this in a gathering like this? Because it shows, he's the son of immigrants, it shows the value of immigrants to America. It shows what our communities contributed to this nation. And it shows the value of science and education and technology that needs to be funded. We need to uplift more stories like Dr. Balachandran when we're talking about the contributions to this country.
Hi.
Hi, Ashwin.
Thanks for being here, Ro.
Of course.
So my name is Ashwin, just for context. I ran for Georgia State Senate in 2024. Ro, thanks for, you endorsed me at the time. So
Good for you.
But unfortunately did not win, but I ended up going back to the AI world, actually in the Bay Area. So my question here is about AI regulation now. So as you've mentioned, AI is creating a tremendous amount of wealth concentration now, and you've talked about things like the billionaire tax and ways to improve that. As we're seeing, there's a shift between people who have capital have a lot more power as opposed to labor because of how AI can automate away a lot of that. Some people have proposed things like moratoriums on data centers, and I'm curious, what's your stance on that in particular, and how do we make sure that we continue to allow, America to innovate in these issues while preventing the inequality that's being caused by them?
Well, Ashwin, I appreciate it. And you ran a great campaign. You know, I won on my third try. I didn't win on my first try. So I hope you'll stay with it, and I hope you'll run again. Then perseverance makes such a big difference in politics, and you have all of the skills to really make an impact. My view is that we need a new tech social contract. Data centers can't just be extractive. They can't leave the electricity bill on the consumers. They can't take water from a local community. They can't disrupt the planning of a local community and just ride roughshod over local zoning. But of course, we need data centers. I mean, we can't just say we don't want any data centers. I look to Singapore and Finland for the right type of model, which is that tech companies should bear the costs of any electricity bills. Tech companies should bear the costs of water and use dry cooling and techniques that aren't going to be water intensive. And they need to be providing public compute into those communities, to libraries and schools. And they need to commit to hiring people and investing capital. They're not just the electricians who maybe needed to build the data centers or maintain the data centers, but people who could apply AI and work in technology jobs and be part of these high-paying jobs so that the community feels it's a benefit. Right now, it's too much of a one-way streak. So we need a new tech social contract that allows for innovation, but allows every part of this country to get a stake in the innovation as opposed to wealth extraction by just a few.
Thank you.
I just want to say I've followed you for a really long time. You might be the first Indian I've heard about in politics, and it's been great to see.
I'm that old, huh?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know. I think I'm late to the game, is what it is. But one thing I've appreciated about you is your clear messaging on various platforms and being able to use accessible language and really connect with what affects your constituents. And also we see with Mamdani, a lot of focus is on affordability. So I'm curious, based on your experiences so far, what are messages that are not hitting with the other side that you think while we can keep the goal, we need to reshape how we present it, especially like urgent things that we need to work on.
That are not hitting with Republicans, you're saying? Or?
Yeah, Republicans, neocons.
Yeah.
You're saying.
Well, I would say that people don't want the status quo. They're upset with a nation that has seen the American dream's prospects be dimmed, that has seen deindustrialization, that has seen wealth concentration, that has seen us engage in foreign wars. And so when we become the party that just says we want to preserve institutions and preserve the institutions that are as they are, or preserve them by tinkering on the edges or nudging them into better outcomes, and the other side says we want to tear it all down, then people are sympathetic to those who are saying let's burn it all down because they don't believe these systems are working for them. We need to be the party of bold change. We need to be the party that says these institutions have failed you, that a governing elite has failed you. By definition, my colleagues, some of them don't like it when I say this, by definition, the previous generation wasn't the greatest generation. If they were, we wouldn't have 2 terms of Donald Trump. By definition, they failed this country. By definition, we need anyone part of the problem out. The old guard out. Let a new generation lead. You failed. You led to 2 Donald Trump terms. You led to a country that is at each other's throats. Give new people a chance to offer an actual bold economic vision for redevelopment, to offer a vision for human rights, to offer a vision to bring this country together. The Democratic Party's biggest mistake would be running the same people that we have for years. I don't understand what Chuck Schumer's still doing there. I really don't. That's a start.
Hi there. Thank you so much for speaking. I wanted to bring the conversation back to using AI for the public sector.
Yeah.
I am a former federal government worker with the State Department, illegally reduced in reduction in force. I think there's a couple of us here, actually. My question really relates to AI being pushed within federal services and the sector overall. So, for example, at state, there's a push for state GPT to be utilized. And my question is, how are you and other members of Congress providing oversight on ensuring that there are safeguards and just better ethical utilizations of AI when publicly or personal identifiable information is involved, especially of the US taxpayer, when utilizing such services within federal agencies and in Congress?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very, very sorry what happened to you. We need to have more respect for civil servants in America. We need to recognize that a lot of the civil servants have built so much of our infrastructure, have built so many of our services that we take for granted, and have built the diplomacy that this president is destroying. It's not unrelated that he hollowed out the State Department, hollowed out USAID, and that we are in a world where we have very few allies other than Netanyahu. I mean, Barack Obama had allies across the world, and that was because of the State Department and diplomacy and a belief in embassies. So the next Democratic administration should be very clear. We need to get rid of Schedule F that allows for the firing of civil servants. We need to make it clear that we shouldn't be allowed to just reassign agencies without congressional approval. We need to make it clear that you can't just fire people on probation. We need to, again, strengthen the safeguards for the civil service and uplift the civil service. It's one of the reasons I talked about the Work for America plan, to get young people serving the country in the federal government or local communities to rebuild America. As we do this, of course, we want to be innovative in technology, but we need to have a human being in the loop. We cannot just have AI eliminate jobs and human judgment, especially when it comes to things like whether someone should be free or not, whether someone should have health care or not, whether we should strike another country militarily or not, whether we should engage in diplomacy or not. There needs to be a human in the loop and human judgment and human oversight, even if they're using the tools of technology. And that has to be the balance. I say I'm not an AI accelerationist, I'm not an AI doomer, I'm an AI democratist. I believe we use the tools of AI, but with human beings and human judgment driving those for better outcomes. And that's how I would make sure that there's oversight in any of the tools that were used, with human judgment being paramount. Okay, well, we're out of time. You can always get me on X or Facebook. I really appreciate all of you being here. Excellent questions, and I hope you have a wonderful 3-day conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Khanna. Can we give him another round of applause, please? And now we are so delighted to have a dear friend of Impact join us to speak before lunch, someone we've had the honor of crisscrossing the country with, turning out voters and supporting Democrats up and down the ballot, and advocating for bills in the halls of Congress to protect immigrant communities. Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi didn't just break barriers, he made sure others could follow. He mentored and lifted so many who are now serving in office, and he's delivered working for working families, standing up for extremism, and, standing up against extremism, the right type of extremism, and getting results in Congress. His belief in the American dream is real because he's lived it, an immigrant who grew up on public housing and food stamps. This story belongs to so many of us, and because of Raja, it will belong to even more. Please join me in welcoming Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi. Thank you.
That's the first time I've been called an extremist. So thank you. It's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be any place they can pronounce my name right. And I want to observe those 3 rules of public speaking: be short, be sweet, and be silent. So 3 points. First of all, can you give a big round of applause to Deepak, Neil, Chintan, and all the people who made today's... I can't hear you. Come on. I saw on the mental health chat or board over there various beautiful messages about what's making people feel happy, everything from a birth of a child for some of you to, someone said, getting your morning coffee. So we are going to have a great time today and through this 3-day conference, and so thank you so much for having me. The second point is, please indulge me, I just want to tell you a little bit about my backstory and why I'm here and what I believe in. And what I think you should consider as well. My backstory is very simple. I was made in India. I was born in India. I see some other people who were too. I came to this country when I was 3 months old, to Buffalo, New York. And things were going good until suddenly they went bad in a hurry in the recession of the 1970s. Unfortunately, my father lost his income. But thanks to the generosity of the American people, we were allowed to move into public housing and food stamps. So I spent the first part of my childhood in those 2 life-sustaining programs. Then my father got on his feet and then got a great job in, of all places, Peoria, Illinois. And so loaded up the U-Haul truck, started driving, and reached Peoria, and that's where we entered the middle class. And pretty much every night at the dinner table, my father would say, think of the greatness of this country. And whatever you do, my brother and me, just make sure it's there for the next families who need it. And so that became the North Star of my personal compass. So fast forward through college and law school, came back to Illinois, worked in the public and private sectors, eventually ran for Congress, won, and now 5 terms later, 10 years later, I'm still working on that mission statement my parents assigned to me, which is make sure this country is there for the next families who need it. And so that American dream, however, that we were privileged to lead, and many of us in this room were, is under assault. And it feels impossible for millions of people today because of the chaos of the Trump administration. I mean, you can just look at my personal story to understand why. That legal immigration system that enabled us to come to this country is being dismantled every single day as we speak. The public housing and food stamps and the vital components of the social safety net are on the chopping block now. And those public schools that were the gateway to the American dream for all of us in this room are under assault as the Trump administration actually seeks to close the Department of Education. So I respectfully submit to you the central question of this election cycle, and certainly today, in my opinion, is this: what kind of a country do we want? What kind of a government do we want? Do we want a government that's there for those fighting to make it, or do we want a government that primarily caters to those who have it made? I say we want a government that is trying to cultivate the American dream for everyone. Are you with me on this? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter how you pray, whom you love, or the number of letters in your name. There are 29 in mine. And so that is what I believe is at stake in this election. And that is something I believe that everyone in this room needs to fight for. So what do we do about it? I understand that the people in this audience, and for that matter, I believe Desis are not politically monolithic. I get that. But I believe that we believe in the rule of law. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in opportunity, not exclusion. We're against a president who would trample on the Constitution and on individual rights. We're against a president who would go to war illegally and unjustly, such as we are in Iran and in Venezuela. We're against the ripping of the social safety net. We are against, in my opinion, I hope everybody is, the bigotry and hatred directed at minorities, including Desis today. Are you with me on that? There is bigotry and hatred directed toward every single one of us in this room. There are people in this country who wish we were not here. I know this personally. There was a Florida MAGA politician who sought to deport me from this country. And my response to him was very simple. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. Are you with me on this? We are not going anywhere. This is our country, and we're going to fight for it. But that means you have to take action. And so I respectfully submit 3 things that everyone in this audience needs to do and encourage others to do. First, we have to vote. We like to talk politics in the Desi community, but we don't do politics. And politics is a verb, it's not a noun. And so it's time to vote. Are you with me on that? That's a tepid applause. Are you with me on this? This is important. It doesn't happen, it has to happen now. Secondly, we have to join causes bigger than ourselves politically. And so that means working on the local referenda that exist in our schools, the various different endeavors that are bigger than any one individual but are vital for our community. And then third, it's time to run for office. Are you with me on that? There's an old saying in Washington, D.C., which is, you can either have a seat at the table or you're on the menu. And none of us can afford to be on the menu. When I was growing up, my father said to me, Raja, you can do anything you want to do in life. I said, really? Yes, he said, you can be a civil engineer, electrical engineer, computer engineer, mechanical engineer, or a doctor. I ended up getting a BS in mechanical engineering. Of course, people say I practice the BS part now. But the point is, it's time to run for office. I know many of you are running for office and have achieved office as elected officials, but more of us need to get at it and encourage others to do the same. And so with that, I'll just close with my favorite saying. Yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. I am honored and blessed to be with you for just a few short minutes of your precious time to celebrate you and to celebrate impact. The fact that you have gone from, I think, less than 10 elected officials who were Desis in the year 2000 to over 300 now is a direct consequence of your work. You're having an impact. God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
Can we give him another round of applause? Thank you, Representative Krishnamurthy. I am not going to try to stand between y'all and lunch, but I do have a few announcements, so if y'all bear with me for a second. So we're going to break for lunch in 1 second. There's lunch behind you and in the hallway, so we can hopefully get through the lines pretty quickly. You can either eat here in the ballroom or you can join a networking lunch. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, the introverted side of me, oh, here we go. The introverted side of me would want to like kind of stay to myself, take care of yourself as you need to, but we are in this room of incredible people, so try to get to know some folks. So up behind me are the 4 networking sessions. We have Meeting the Moment, Amplifying South Asian Women Across Every Room. That is in the Palm Courtroom, which is on this level. We have a Healing Space for South Asian Activists. That is in the North Carolina room upstairs on the 2nd level. We have Breaking the Silence, It Starts With You. That's in the Independence Room down 1 level. And then we have Caregiving Together, which is in the Constitution Room down 1 level as well. We also have the Table Expo in the back, learn about incredible organizations serving our community. After lunch, after the networking session, join us back in this ballroom by 12:45 for our next plenary for our future. Thank you all.